What you are about to hear will blow your mind and give you six-pack abs without even exercising.
Pull up a bar stool and relax.
Hey, who wants to have some fun?
You've made it to Happy Hour with John Gaskins.
Oh, no. Not again.
Get ready for entertaining local and regional sports talk that will change your life. Or not.
And by the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Here's your host, John Gaskins.
Here's Johnny. Hello! Ah!
I'm back, baby! I'm back!
Hey, happy hour on a Wednesday, the first day of July, the first day. North Dakota State is now in the FBS and out of the Missouri Valley Football Conference. For the time being, no more Dakota marker rivalry, no more 800-pound gorilla to get past for MVFC titles and national titles for the Jackrabbits and the Coyotes. And Zach Borg and I broke that down a lot yesterday. You can check that out on Happy Hour. We'd love it if you checked it out on Sioux Falls Live and watched the show. You can watch all these shows at SiouxFallsLive.com. Video producer Cordell Wright does a great job of making it a good watch for you. And we are so thankful for our friends at St. Cloud State University for making this show possible. And today's a very special edition of the show. We're going to hone in on one guest and one topic. And this is a good time of year to do it with the football season upon us. Few letters are more of a lightning rod in sports right now than NIL. I mean, it is difficult to have a discussion about the state of college sports without bringing up name, image, and likeness, which has transformed from, hey, let's give athletes a chance to pocket money that is rightfully theirs, from, say, endorsements and jersey sales, to this is their salary. This is what it costs for them to play at your school, and there are no limitations to it. In fact, fewer limitations than professional sports, because they can just bounce around year to year. You know this. It has driven away legendary coaches like Nick Saban and Chris Klieman in college football. In hoops, Jay Wright, Roy Williams, Coach K. I mean, the latter two were getting up there in age anyway, as was Saban, but still, Bob Nielsen at USD, some guys who said, yeah, it's a different world. I don't want to coach in it. And most recently, Dusty May, who's not even 50, left one of the best and most lucrative gigs in college hoops, where he was on top of the mountain at Michigan right after a national title. He takes an NBA job last week with the Dallas Mavericks, and reportedly so, partly because he didn't have to deal with the headache of NIL and constantly rotating players and rosters. So NIL has certainly affected our favorite teams around here in South Dakota, mainly because the Division I and the Division II schools in our state are more frequently losing players from their roster who leave for schools that can, guess what, offer them more NIL money. Of course, NIL has led to a new industry, NIL agents and agencies. Like the pros, these college athletes can seek representation so they can potentially land the best possible NIL deals, or at the school they desire. There isn't just big bucks at stake for the athletes, but for the agents who get a cut of their NIL money, the same way your real estate agent gets a percentage of the money from your house or condo when you sell it. NIL agents at this point generally have a negative reputation, it appears to me, in the public eye. North Dakota State basketball coach Dave Richman lashed out at them last season, telling a story about an agent trying to get in the ear of one of his players during the season. It affected, in Dave Richman's mind, his ability to operate as a head coach and the culture of his team and the way it was playing. NIL agents, by some coaches in the industry, have been called nothing short of slimeballs or scumbags. Other coaches, like SDSU's Dan Jackson and USD basketball's Eric Peterson, have told me that there are good eggs in the NIL agency basket as well. People who mean well and genuinely want to help athletes, coaches, and schools do it the right way, whatever that means, while, of course, making a living by doing it. Remember, it's a two-way street. Athletes are looking for other places to play, and coaches are looking for athletes to transfer in to improve their rosters. They all need NIL agents from time to time. So it's about time that the sporting public of South Dakota meets someone from an NIL agency to learn more about the business and how it works. That agency represents not only college athletes seeking NIL opportunities, but currently represents NFL players, most notably Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Baker Mayfield. And Kirk Herbstreit, not a player, but you may have heard of him, is also in the stable. And perhaps you've heard of one of the newest clients at CSG. His name is Chase Mason. He'll be represented for his NFL future. He doesn't need it in the NIL, as far as I know. So back in early March, a scout from a new South Dakota-based NIL agency, the one I've just mentioned, reached out to me to join this show and do just that, explain how this all works. And so now the time has come. In fact, he's here now. He's Noah Clair from CSG. Noah, it's good to have you with us. First of all, let's get the framework out of the way. CSG, what it stands for, and what you do for the agency. And thank you so much for joining us to hopefully illuminate people on, again, how this all works.
Well, yeah, John, thanks for having me, man. Greatly appreciated you having taken the time to have me on and to hopefully shed some light on the space and to provide some clarity in what I can share. And I want to make sure I first say I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. That I'd be a very rich man if I did. But I think the first thing I'll say is CSG, we're a full service professional representation agency. So NIL is a small part of what we do. And we have a lot of great people that are a lot more better looking and really good at their jobs than I am. So I'm just a small piece of the machine at CSG, but really proud of what we built. CSG, I won't get into the name because actually we're changing the actual name, but it was based off of we wanted to create a bond, and some would say like a kind of like a covenant between us and players, and some blood covenant, like based off of honesty and trust between us and players, and obviously us and God. And so the backstory of CSG is a unique one. And obviously me being from South Dakota, and I know probably a lot of people watching this right now, I grew up in this area. I love our state. And over the last, 9.5 years, I'm 29. I know I look like I'm 59, judging by my hairline.
You don't.
But I am only this light from the window. I didn't realize how bad it made me shine. I am shining today, man.
Yeah, I am too. That's why I wear a hat.
I never thought I'd ever be in the agency space. I love scouting and evaluation, and over the last 9 years, I did it kind of like as a side hustle, if you will, but never got paid for it. I took pride in helping players get to the NFL or get to the NBA, and so I would work jobs here in South Dakota to keep my rent and my life afloat. But also, in this behind the scenes, I was helping guide players, and I would find good players that no one knew about, and help like Jerry Maguire, help bring him to good agencies. And I never took a paycheck for it because I really did love it. And I made a lot of friends through it and helped like 20 plus players get married with good agents. So I got to know a lot of big time agents and I got to learn the space, and I got to see the ugly of the space. Because as John said, when you opened up the show, there's a lot of ugly, but there is good too. You just have to find it. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And my ultimate goal is to get in the NFL as a scout. That was what I've always aspired to be. I loved evaluation of talent. I love finding talent. And I had some opportunities come up here about 1.5 years ago after I scouted for the NFL Hula Bowl. I got my scouting reports in front of some NFL people. I had some opportunities to interview / get in the door with some potential jobs, and I didn't get the jobs. So last May, I'm sitting there at the ripe age of 28, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I've bet myself and I failed. It's probably time for me to move on and just get a normal job and live my life now. Sports aren't going to pay my bills. And in the way God does, so often when you least expect it, he changes your life. And looking back at it now, it's just almost emotional. I just look back and I'm like, wow, it was such a God thing. Long story short, and I'll spare you the intricate details, but I was sitting in my room one day. I got a phone call from a gentleman, and I don't know if I even want to say his name in here. So I don't know if he wants to be mentioned, but it was now my boss. He said, hey, I've seen what you've done the last 8.5 years, 9 years. I know the kind of person you are, your moral fabric. And I talked to an investor and we want to create a sports agency. And he said, think about it, pray about it, get back to me. And I said, you're crazy. That's a very hard industry to break into. I'm good. And I hung up the phone and went back to bed. It was like a Saturday morning. But, in hindsight, he always told me he knew I'd call him back. He just knew I needed time to think about it. Well, I called some of my mentors in the space, Chuck Pagano. I'm sure you know Chuck Pagano. Chuck's a mentor of mine and a very good friend and someone I go to for wisdom. And I asked him, like, what would you do? And he goes, what do you have to lose? Yeah, and he's very blunt. He goes, you struck out everything else. He goes, what do you have to lose? And that was like a hard thing to hear. But he said, you have capital from investors and you have the network. And he's like, you have the work ethic. Go take a shot at it. So basically, John, I called it back. And the premise of what we wanted to start was we knew the industry's nasty. We know it's disgusting. It can be disgusting. We wanted to create an industry, an agency that operated off of authenticity, consistency, trust, love Jesus, love people, and, real relationships and real networks, and not having to kind of bluster and gaslight kids and families. We just wanted to be able to say honesty, like, here's what we do, here's who we know, here's how we're going to help your kid. And we're going to work in a collaborative fashion with college coaches and your families and professional coaches to make sure you're taken care of in the long-term picture. And what I'm about to tell you is nuts. And I always say it's going to be a South Dakota great sports story one day, if it isn't already now. They said, hey, find a person you want to join you. So I went and found a guy, and it's obviously on our website at csgathletes.com, named Matt Wolfslayer, a lawyer from Tulsa, who was also an NFLPA certified NFL agent. And the reason I picked him out of all the agents I knew is because I knew his lineage, his family has a rich history in the NFL representation space. He's also a great guy, morally matched what we wanted to do. And I called him. I said, hey, Matt, we're starting this agency. Do you want to jump in with us? And he said, I told him what it was about. He said, I'm all in. And so the first, 3 or 4 months, John, we just started pounding pavement. We were flying all over the country, meeting with players and relying on the networks and connections that me and Matt have built behind the scenes the last 8 years in our respective roles. And it was going great. Like, honestly, everyone always asked me what it was like before we blew up. I was like, well, it was pretty great, we thought. Like, we really did trust God. We knew it'd take 3 or 4 years to really get a big time player, we thought at the time. And we really just had ultimate trust in God. And we felt like, hey, God, like, we want to be a great steward of what you've given us and blessed us with. And we want to glorify you with this. And we want to operate in absolute honesty and transparency. And we believe if we do things the right way all the time, every time, as our COO always says, you'll be rewarded for doing the right thing. And we felt good about where we were at. But then everything changed, in early fall, and my life changed forever. And I think all of our lives changed forever. We had reached out to Matt's uncle named Tom Mills. And for those who know the industry, Tom Mills is like on the Mount Rushmore of NFL agency work. Him and Drew Pittman has a book called First Team Dad. Tony Dungy wrote the foreword for it. Tom Mills has represented guys like Brian Bosworth to his dad represented Eric Dickerson. The Mills family name is very respected in the NFL, and Tom is a legendary agent. And he's done it for 39 years. Drew Pittman, his associate's done it for like 35 years or something like that. And they've had very rich tradition. And obviously their notable clients are Baker Mayfield, Jonathan Cooper, Ben Powers. We have these litany of big names over their entirety of their career, not just now. And they've done it the right way. And obviously, if you've lasted this long in the industry, it's because you've done a really good job. And they've always operated under the premise of absolute honesty, transparency, and doing things the right way. And so we reached out to them and said, hey, like, here's a shot in the dark. Would you consider meeting with our bosses and potentially merging with us? And I think at the time they thought we were crazy. We're some startup in the middle of South Dakota. There's no way. But they met with our bosses in a different state, and they went over some different business dealings. And they felt, after talking to Tom in the latter parts of now, they felt this meshed with what their moral fabric and what they believe the industry should be like. And they joined with us. And I give a lot of credit to my boss and our COO, who are South Dakota guys, for having the vision and the confidence and the courage to do something like this, because this isn't just something you just decide to do. It's a huge financial commitment, and it takes guts. And so all of a sudden, in a period of 4 or 5 months, John, we grew overnight. We went from being a small fledgling agency to having a heavy hitter hand. And we had connections with every NFL team, every college team. And the connection that me and Matt already had just grew. And it became much easier now to go to talk with the top tier talent in the country, because we could say, oh, we have these players And we have Tom Mills, and Tom Mills commands a ton of credibility in the representation space. And so all of a sudden we have this big agency, but everyone always asks about, like, when we talk to players, John, I always say this to players, we could talk for an hour about our connections. I mean, Tom, we have access to every NFL team and every college team, direct cell phone numbers and relationships with GMs because of Tom and Drew and the great leadership at CSG. But what I think is more important to talk about when I talk to players is we could talk about all that stuff that sounds really attractive. But what I like to talk about is you're not going to find an agency in America, and I say this very honestly, that is going to care more about their players, love their players more, be more intentional and authentic, transparent about business than we're going to be. Because we believe it's a commitment we make to them. And I know it's a very transactional industry, and I get you have to make money doing it. But we believe you can make money and do business the right way while also being consistent and authentic. And, with players, it's all about the long-term vision. Now, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but like we believe in long-term vision over short-term circumstance. And I know like the big thing with NIL nowadays, and NIL can have a bad rap to it if we allow it to. But with NIL, we believe if you're in a great spot and you have a chance, and we always believe in intel and data-based research, and we've heard feedback like, hey, you can make the NFL from here, the NBA from here, whatever it may be, and you're happy here. Let's make decisions that are informed based off of information we've ascertained, not just throwing gum against the wall hoping it sticks. And in regards to South Dakota schools, we have a great state. Like, I'm a South Dakota kid. Our CEO is from South Dakota. Obviously, Tom is from Denver, and Drew's from Dallas, and Ray Truitt, who was part of Deion Sanders' team when Deion came in the league. He's from Detroit. We have a great team. Joe's from California. Matt's from Tulsa. We have a great marketing team that's that's simply in charge of just marketing and reaching out to big brands and has a huge network. So we're a full service agency but we want pro level players. Like, if we're not here just to make a bunch of money off NIL, we'll do NIL, but the goal is always long-term vision. And we're really lucky because in our state, I'm from South Dakota, John. You know how great the state is. We have a lot of great universities in our state, whether it's South Dakota State or University of South Dakota or Augustana or USF, Black Hills State. And I know all the coaches at all those schools. And we have a great working relationship with most of them. And we've always, when we got into this thing, we always went to them. We promised them, we can't promise you that we're always going to agree. But what we can promise you is we're always going to look to do the right thing, to be honest and transparent with you, and to always help serve and do the right thing for the player. And if we can find a happy ground where we can also serve the university and serve the people there as well as much as we can, we want to help them. Because one thing I've noticed, last thing I'll say, I'm rambling here, and not going to name names, but in talking to a lot of these college coaches the last couple of months, I mean, it's been Big Ten and SEC level head coaches I've had conversations with. And one Big Ten level coach yesterday, I was on the phone with him on the way back from Minneapolis, and he told me, and this is literally kind of funny how we're having this conversation today. He said that the coaches he knows in this space, that obviously they talk, they value their relationship with us because of the transparency factor, the authenticity. And it doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but we're always going to do the right thing, or at least try to do the right thing. And that's something that I think has been lost in this space over the last 20 plus years when it's become highly monetized.
Okay, so just to review through the digestion of that, for starters, so you're an NIL scout, evaluator, scout. You try to bring clients into the agency, and from there, the agents will take it from there to get contracts hammered out and for guys to become clients, and then you strike deals. And it sounds like for both players in college looking for an NIL opportunity, but also players in the pros looking for representation there.
Small caveat to that. So I'm our player liaison, director of scouting. So my job is to find players that we believe are long-term professional level players. Now, we can hit on every player, no, but we want guys that have long-term vision of playing the pros. We do NIL, but we're a professional level agency. We're not an NIL agency only. We're NFL certified. We're getting our basketball stuff done right now. We are a full service agency. We do NIL only if the player we feel has a chance to play long-term. And then in regards to another part of my title is I'm a player family liaison. So it's my job to pick up the phone 24 hours a day. Like one of my key jobs is making players feel like family. I always say to players, John, one day you're going to get done with sports. You're going to get married one day and have kids, hopefully. We want to be at your wedding. We really want to have an intentional, authentic relationship with our players and their families.
Okay. Well, let's get down to the how it all works from your end of things, evaluating and figuring out who you are going to have as a potential client, an athlete who you're going to have as a potential client for your agency. How do you go about that in just determining who you'd like to go after, and then how do you go after them?
Yeah, great question. It's an interesting space now because as the industry continues to evolve, there's kids 13, 14 years old that are getting hit up by agents. And when it comes to that age, I always tell people, I always want to talk to the parent first. If I have to reach out to the kid, I will to get a hold of the parent, but I never want to have exclusive conversation just with the child because that's not right. We want to be able to work in transparency with the parent as well to have honest conversation about what our thoughts are on the kid. So how I go about evaluating players is the same way that I went when I was scouting for the Hula Bowl. I look at projectables. Like, the big thing I learned when I was scouting with the NFL Hula Bowl is neck, rump, and ankle. And it sounds crazy, but you can tell a lot about a player and their projection by those three measurables. And so when it comes to football, that's what I look for immediately. And then you marry that with production, like have they produced or can they produce, projecting potential. That's the big one is, can you do it? Because at the end of the day, no matter how good of a dude you are, if you can't play, what are we doing? And so that's the first thing I do. The second thing after I figure out a player, if they're good enough, and obviously we talk to players all across the country, whether it's from Florida to Washington to Texas to Alabama, you name it, South Dakota. And we want the best kids in South Dakota. Like at the end of the day, South Dakota, we're an agency based out of here, but we have national reach. I think this provides a wonderful opportunity for the kids of our state that have high level potential to be married with a legitimate NFL agency and professional sports agency that has, I would argue, more reach than any agency in America because of Tom Mills and Drew Pittman and some of these legendary agents that are joining us, that have joined us, I should say. But we want the best in our state because there's great kids in our state that are being developed, and we want the best to stay with CSG. And so, I'll say if there's a parent out there listening to this or a kid out there listening to this, reach out because we're for you. But next thing I do when it comes to evaluating, I want to know about the kid's character. It sounds corny, but like we're big on character. We don't want headaches. We want guys because there's a legacy to uphold with, especially with our older agents like Tom and Drew. They've built a reputation in the NFL and collegiate football space of having high level kids that are also high level humans. And we value that. We value character at a high level. And then lastly, the vision of the kid. If your goal is just to make a bunch of money your first year of college, we're probably not for you. If we can marry making some money in college while also having long-term vision of playing professionally, then we are for you. But for us, it's always about long-term vision. And that's why I love our South Dakota schools, because you look at South Dakota State or USD or whatever, the vision for those schools, like Dan Jackson says this all the time in his shows, is come get developed. And I would say the same thing for USD, probably says the same thing. I've never had that conversation with Coach Fitzham, but they come get developed here. We're going to develop you and get you ready. And then if you're ready to make that jump, make the jump, but come get developed here. And if you can make it from here, you can make it from here. And I think both schools have proven that. SDSU talks all the time, like the lineage they've had of the Tucker Crafts and the Pierce Strongs, the guys that have came here, and Dallas Goddards and have made it from here. But we value, our process of evaluation is very strenuous. We're not just hitting up millions of kids. We're looking at, we were talking to a couple of kids yesterday in Texas, and they're some of the better players in Texas. And that's one thing I think people would be surprised is we're meeting with some of the best players in the country right now. We're not meeting with guys that are just fledgling. We're some of the best players in America CSG's meeting with. We've quickly grown into a respectable agency because of the legendary agents, but also because of the way we do business.
Okay. What percentage of your clients are like from South Dakota, either South Dakota high schoolers or currently playing at South Dakota colleges? Because you say you only want clients that have NFL potential. So what percentage right now is your agency, your South Dakota-based agency? How many of them are from South Dakota? And then how many of them, how much have you spread your wings beyond South Dakota? Just what's the pie look like right now?
Yeah. Another great question. So we take pride in our South Dakota kids, man. And we have a basketball agency too. And we have some stuff coming up with that. We haven't announced yet. Some guys will be joining us from a representative perspective. But our basketball agency is going to grow really nice, we think. But South Dakota, obviously everyone talks about Chase Mason. Tom Mills, who's Baker Mayfield's agent, will be Chase Mason's NFL agent, and we're really proud of Chase. We got Joe Saylor playing basketball at South Dakota State. We got Bradley Esser, who's going to Iowa State, who's at Iowa State, I should say. Sullivan Schlimgen, who's going, obviously he's at Iowa State as well. Ashton Copel, who's a girls basketball player, going to Nebraska. And then Brinley Altenberg, who's also from South Dakota, who's going to Nebraska as well on our girls side of the agency. And we take a lot of pride in our South Dakota kids. It's they're homegrown. And the South Dakota talent continues to rise. There's a lot of great kids out of Sioux Falls. I know, John, you've talked a lot about some of the kids at Iowa State that are going on to play at the next level. Or going on to play in the collegiate space, I should say, that are really good. And I think our talent continues to be developed here by the high school coaches in our state, and the college coaches in our state have done a really good job. So forgive me if I've missed out on something, but I think that's what you asked. So. Well,
what percentage of your clients are South
Dakotans,
and what percentage are not South Dakotans?
I would say right now we probably have, I'll say terrible at math, as my high school math teacher would attest to.
Give us a ballpark.
Ballpark. Probably 15 to 20% of our clients are South Dakotan kids, and then the rest, obviously, we have kids from across the country.
And are you working mostly with South Dakota kids, both on the ground level, finding them and getting them into the agency?
That's one of my roles. Yeah. Obviously, I do national, so I scout all over the country. So I meet with a lot of players, but obviously, I take pride in our South Dakota kids.
Gotcha. So you've explained your evaluation process and the fact that given the age, you said if they are 13 to 14-year-olds, you start what's the youngest you've started a relationship with?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about not just like they've agreed, but like you've tried to start a relationship with. What's the youngest athlete? What
Good
age?
question. Out none in our state currently, but out in different parts of the country, I've spoken with a kid and his parent, and he's been 14 years old. But they're high level projectables, but we make it very clear to the parent, like, we're an NFL level agency. We view your kid's a long term investment, and we think highly of your kid, but we don't want to talk to your kid without you present ever, because you're a part of that structure. And at the end of the day, what's the most important asset of a father or a mother? It's their child. So we want to we want to respect that boundary and make sure we respect it as well.
Okay. What's the average age? Like, typically, what age are you typically dealing with?
Yeah. Anywhere from, 17 to, into the college level age, 21, 22. And then obviously our pro guys are all varying ages.
Okay. What percentage of your clients are college players that are on the cusp of going pro? And what percentage are either on the cusp of going to college or early in their college years, and therefore still climbing the ladder and potentially just looking for better NIL deals at their first or second school?
Percentage of clients that are getting ready to go pro or have, that probably
or
30,
are pro.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Then probably I would say close to 45 to 50% of our clients are either professionally represented right now in the NFL or going to be in the next year. And then we have obviously our clients, our pipeline kids that we feel are all NFL level potential off the feedback we've gotten from scouts. They're probably the other 45%.
Okay. So, I think we'll stick, for most of our conversation in the NIL and college space, the clients that you have that you're trying to get them into the best possible college situation from out of high school and or the best possible next college situation at the college they are already at. And so it's like, it might be two different conversations, but let's stick with the high schoolers. So you had how often do parents just tell you, no, we don't want an agent at all? How many agencies typically, given the kid's talent and potential, are you competing against? Like, just give us a little look into, again, the ground level work at which you're at and, how it works with these coveted athletes once you've made the connection and made your sales pitch. We're the good guys. We care about their character. Once that has happened, kind of what's typically the reaction? What happens next? I know I'm throwing 3 or 4 questions at once. If it's a parent, and then when do you first get to the player? Like, let's just keep walking alongside you in the process.
So honestly, knock on wood here, John, we haven't been told no a whole lot. we've had a couple of kids and parents say, hey, we're not ready right now. Like, hey, come back to us in a year. And we say, okay. And so I set my calendar for 6 months and I check in once a month to be intentional. So we've honestly been pretty blessed with, in terms of like the college space, not being told no. Or having like the delay but not denial, and then competing with with the pool. The first couple months it was just me and Matt. We were swimming in the kind of the kiddie pool, like we were kind of getting our legs under us. But since the addition of all the big names, we've been swimming in the deep end with some pretty big name agencies competing against some bigger names, and we've won some and we've lost some, as the nature of the business works. But we feel like we're in a good spot with where we're at as of today. And some of the players we haven't announced yet, we've landed some pretty big fish that we're excited to announce and a national scale. And so yeah, and I'm sorry, I apologize. Next question here that I'm forgetting.
We're just happy to get a glimpse into someone and some agency, and I'm happy to hear and congratulations on your success. We want to learn about the process. We want to learn about the steps along the way, how a kid comes from being initially contacted by you to okay, then how does it keep working to where you've signed them? They feel comfortable with you. And then we want to get into, how they get into the exact financial agreements that they pull with their schools. So
perfect. Yeah.
We'll start with, like, you've made the initial contact. Now what?
Okay. Make the initial contact with the family. We set up meetings with the mom or the father or a leader in that child's life. And we typically have, myself and one of our NFL certified agents, because I'm not NFL certified. I work primarily in the college space, and then we, have the pipeline to hand off to the NFL guys. And we typically have one of those guys on the phone call with the family, and we give a family a vision of what we believe for their child. And we like to make it very clear, we're not just saying, here's the end goal. We like to walk them through every step. Like, here's what we feel your child can do. Here's what we bring to the table in transparency and honesty. We're not going to overpromise and underdeliver. We're going to promise you what we believe to be what we can promise you. And then to the end, obviously the end goal. So we meet with the parents and the families. We talk through all that stuff. We have our marketing team sometimes on the phone calls and talk about marketing. And that's one misconception, I think, in this space that's been greatly taken advantage of by people, is they think, oh, there's loads of NIL money. Everyone's getting deals, and brand deals are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's just simply not the case. The average NIL deal in America right now for a brand to a player is less than $600. And most kids aren't getting that. Most kids are doing product exchanges. So when you see online, like I did a marketing deal with such and such brand, usually it's just product exchange. It looks like it's money being exchanged because they post on Instagram or Twitter. It's usually just product exchange. Brands are smart. They're saying, hey, we'll give you something, and if you can sell it for us and we see receipt of what you've done, we'll give you money. But it's not just we're giving you $100,000 right away. And that's for even big time players. We've had conversations with like big time brands, and they've told us directly, we don't care how much following your player has on social media. We want the analytics. Can they make us money? And so we talk about the difference between NIL and revenue share. Revenue share is what schools pay kids. Everyone says a salary or whatever. Yeah. And then there's NIL, and that's what they get outside of that. And so we have honest conversations about, hey, here's what we can provide for you. Here's what we can do for you. And then we talk about the parents like, hey, the money will come. Money will chase you if your kid does the right things the right way. And we're here to help guide your kid and be a steward and come alongside you and not take over your guys' job, but to come alongside you as a family. And so then usually, atypically, the player and the parent go back and they have conversations within each other, and they compare agencies and, what their best fit is for them as a family. And then they come back to us and say, hey, we want to sign you. We want to go with you guys, or we don't want to go with you guys. And our big selling point, John, has always been long-term outlook. Like, we're here. If we're with you right now, it's because we believe there's something about you that says, hey, if things go the right way, you can play at the next level. And atypically, that separates us because no one's talking about long-term usually. It's usually talking about how much money they can make in the first year. And we also are very fair with clients and families. We're not trying to rob them of their money. We feel like we can do good deals and everyone can win. And then if they sign with us, we onboard them with our agency or have our marketing guys meet with them. They get brand alignment deals. Like, hey, what are some brands that you want? Does it guarantee you're going to get those deals? but here's a hyperlink, fill out what you're interested in, and then our marketing guys take over from there and they start advocating for them and talking to brands. And then for us, it becomes about manicuring the relationship, having honest conversations. What are your long-term goals? What are your short-term goals? What does the next year look like for you? And then giving good, wise counsel from guys that have been in it for a while, whether it's myself or Matt or True or Tom or Ray or whomever, saying, hey, like if you're a freshman going to play football at a college, what are the things you need to be doing now to prepare for it that you may not know? And then walking through that next year. Then when negotiation times come, having conversations with college coaches, college GMs about like, hey, what's the value look like? And I think the question that, the whole world asks is, how do you ascertain value? Like, how do you know what number to ask the GM? Well, it starts with having a conversation with the GM and knowing and understanding the role of the player and what their view of him is or she is long-term, right? And then from there, looking at that conference or that level, saying what's the average player making in that position and making sure that player is fairly compensated, not being greedy, but making sure that player is fairly compensated while also making sure that you have maintained a great relationship with the school because that's where the player is going to school. And we want to have a great relationship with the school so that way the player is respected as well as we're respected because we care about our long-term relationships with both the client and the school. Ultimately, our job is to always make sure we protect the interest of the client.
Yeah, I do want to get more into what happens, after a year at the school they've chosen, after they've latched on with you as an agency. But before they even choose the school, and forgive me if I missed something, if you mentioned this, but okay, they've signed with you. Now you're helping them scout schools for them that according to you and your agency's beliefs are best for them and not just for the money. But tell us how you go about. Do you guys contact the GMs of certain schools and say, or head coaches at schools that don't have GMs? Like now you're contacting the schools, and I'm guessing you're compiling which schools are interested and how much they're willing to pay the athlete in NIL. I mean, I guess that could be a true or false question, but I mean, how do we get to the school that the players eventually choose?
Yeah, no, great point. You atypically with us, our players usually already have identified a school they want.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there's high school kids that will ask for our counsel, like, hey, where do you think we should go? Like yesterday, I was on the phone on my drive home with an SEC school and a group of 5 school. And we were having conversations about younger kids, and I was asking their opinion of different kids in different states about, hey, what do you think of this kid? What do you think of this kid? And there was the one kid, the school didn't know who he was. He was like, hey, you should check out this kid. But atypically, the players we have are already signed with the school. So it's about, hey, the fit there. Do you fit there? And atypically they do fit in that school. And now it's about, hey, like long-term, like every year, how do we measure? How do we get better in the off season? How do we improve you to be your best in that school? And then in the rare case that it's not a fit anymore, it's our job to start, start ascertaining information. Hey, where would be the next best place and next fit for you? More than just money, about fit, like who's coming in, who's leaving.
Yep. I keep having to kind of go back here because
my bad.
No, it's not your fault. Most kids identify the schools they want. Then I don't know how that's to ask this. Then why do they need an agency to help them find a school? Are they hearing numbers in the recruiting process now without an agency involved? Do highly coveted kids who are going to, and right now I'm talking about out of high school. We can get into from college to another college here in a moment. But first things first, if kids have identified the schools they want, then like I said, these are all kids who multiple schools are recruiting them. And I'm guessing now in this day and age with the big fish that the coveted 4 or 5 stars for football, and well, any sport, 4 or 5 stars, they have lots of schools, all of whom are offering probably the top end money. So, but they decide, you say, before they take an agency. I'm wondering why they need an agency, because are they being given offers? They know all the offers from all the schools before they choose it?
No,
before you guys come in?
I hate saying great question every time because it feels like I'm being disingenuous. That's a great question though.
Just trying to,
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I was just having this conversation with a coach this morning that I talked to on the phone. If you pick the wrong agent, it's bad. Obviously, it sounds like simple. Obviously, like, oh yeah, I picked the wrong agent, it's bad. But if you pick the right agent, it can be hugely beneficial to your long term. and aligning yourself with I always say, pro agency. Like, I can't sign NIL only agencies. They don't care about the long-term development of the child. It's about making the decisions that are best for the kid in the long term. And if
But
they can
some
align with
pro
great money,
agencies
great.
like yours do NIL, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we do NIL.
Yeah,
But
okay,
so like the way I would state that is, if you're just an NIL only agency, you're making all your money off of the biggest money contracts you can get for your kids right now. With us, our goal is to get them to the NFL. So we want to make sure we guide them and give them to the best fit, even if the money's not the best there. And then to answer your question about like, why do they need an agent if they already picked a school? Well, to protect the relationship, because if it's just an agent representing himself or a player and the parents representing themselves, it can provide awkward walls and conversations that can harm the relationship a tad, as you can imagine. B, to protect interests of the client, and to always have that wall of security as the long-term vision would go. And like, for example, I won't name the player's name, but there was a kid we represented that was coming out of high school, hadn't picked a college yet, and was going through that process. And we obviously had conversations, and he's like, where do you think I should go? And I said, well, here's what these schools offer in regards to, and money's great. I'm not trying to downplay money, but here's what this school offers in regards to your position, who's coming in, who's leaving, your positional coach, the scheme fit for you, which is a huge one for us. You got to fit the scheme. And then if the money can be married to it, then that's the biggest plus. He ended up picking the school he wanted. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's our job to provide counsel. And then whatever they do, it's up to us to support that decision. We're not making the decision for them.
So what you're saying is kids don't always pick the schools that are offering the most money?
Yeah. It sounds crazy, I know. It sounds crazy, I know, but it's true.
Okay. But every school that's going after these big fish are offering them, it's just like the scholarship days, which we still live in as well. There are scholarships. We'll remind people of that. But I had two boys who played football, and we, after a recruiting visit to a school, you sit down with the head coach on Sunday morning before you're about to leave town, and the coach will tell. In this case, it's Division II, so it's a head coach, and they say, "Okay, we'd like to have you come here. Here's what we're offering," and and it was as in, what kind of scholarship? And it looks like you qualify for an academic scholarship, so it looks like we don't have to offer you as much of a football scholarship because you're getting an academic one as well, and blah 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 blah. So I mean, it's always been a business with money involved, but most kids are told by the schools they're wanting to play for in the NIL world with NIL money. They get offered, and then they go back to the drawing table, and this school X is offering me Texas is offering me this much, Alabama's offering me this much, Florida's offering me this much. That's generally what's happening, right? Through all the big time athletes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to the portal last year. I can recount a story from our first portal experience as agents. We had a couple kids obviously in it due to a variety of issues, and it's similar to high school recruiting. They were getting offered like, hey, here's what we can offer. Here's the money we can offer. Here's 900,000. Here's 600,000. Here's 300,000. And yeah, you'd be correct in saying, yeah, it's almost a money game in regards to like, how much money do you really want to make? And the conversations we have with the players is, what are your value system? Like, what do you value? If you want to go make a lot of money, this school has $900,000 to give you, but it's also about education in regards to, okay, not only how you manage your money, like, education, like, you have to pay taxes on that money and stuff like that people tend to forget. But also, like, are you going to be happy there? And we had, there's kids that'll turn down lots of money in favor of the culture. And we've seen it obviously at South Dakota State with, kids turn down money to stay at South Dakota State because they love the culture that's been built there. And, kids at Augustana under Coach Olszewski that have turned down leaving to stay with Coach OJ because they love the culture there. Or it happens a lot more than people think, as kids are becoming wiser, in my assertion. And people are becoming a little more wiser to, like, hey, money doesn't always equal success / happiness. And that's where I think, John, and not to continue to dance around a question if I am, but where we come in is we feel that there is a middle ground where you can make good money, have scheme fit, and have a chance to play at the next level. I'm sorry if I'm missing your questions here. I feel bad if I'm...
No, you didn't there. And, you're illuminating on some things while you're at it. But I guess before I ask the question, I think I'll ask one that a lot of people want to know. What percentage of the NIL money, and I'm talking about your NIL clients going for NIL money at colleges, does your agency get? What percentage of what they get do you guys get?
Definitely. That's again, great question. And there's a wide variety of percentages nowadays. I'm hoping the NCAA will regulate and make it where everyone has to take a similar amount. But there's agencies taking up 20%, 15%, 10%. There's lots of percentages out there. I don't want to divulge any of our business, but I will say this: our percentage is extremely, extremely fair and highly competitive with anybody in the NIL space. Because again, not to dance around it, we feel that we build long-term relationship and we want you for the NFL. So why would we want to take advantage of you and try to make the most of you right now if we feel we want to create an intentional relationship? And John, and this is actually a good point to that point. If you go on our website, if you scroll down, there's a testimonial section, and there's kids from South Dakota whose parents have written testimonials on our website that talk about the way we do business in terms of fairness and equity. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, for the sake of any athlete out there, but more so for the average sports fan, most of us are not athletes or parents of highly coveted athletes working with agencies. I'll happily direct them to your website just to, again, learn more about this process and what it's like for these kids that you guys deal with. So what is that website?
www.csgathletes.com. Letter C, okay. SG, and athletes. And then on social media at CSG Athletes, Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. So, I want to go back to near the beginning where you're talking about CSG and this agency, and you're quite aware of how nasty the industry is. And as I mentioned at the top, scumbags, slimeballs. That's the overall impression of NIL agents. And again, you're a scout, not an agent, but you're in an agency, and you're part of you're a big part of the process of finding the clients for these agencies. And these agencies wouldn't exist unless you guys all make money and pay your bills, or else you wouldn't want to be in this line of work. So the athletes do make money for you. What, first of all, about the industry that you had heard that is nasty that you wanted to avoid? What are some of the horror stories or examples? There's plenty that people can read out there, but what specifically were you guys looking to avoid to establish yourself as the good guys?
Yeah. Sounds corny, but honesty and transparency matter to us at an extremely high level. Transparency and authenticity. Like at the end of the day, John, I get it. It can be nasty if you allow it to be, just like anything. If I have a problem drinking too much Mountain Dew, it gives me gut. Like anything in excess is bad. But we want to come in and be extremely authentic and honest and transparent and provide wise counsel for long-term stewardship.
So what you're saying is that the nastiness in the industry had to do with a lack of transparency? Like, what are some exampals of lack of transparency that you've heard about?
Okay, yeah. Well, without naming any names, not going to throw mud, because we want to only talk about what we do well. We don't want to knock anyone else.
We just want to go.
I've heard stories of kids getting overpromised, like, hey, if you come to our agency, we're going to give you, you're going to make $600,000. And they're telling this to kids that are sophomores or juniors in high school. And you can't make those promises because you haven't had those conversations yet. I know college coaches don't have those conversations at that age. And getting these kids committed to these contracts. And then in the contracts, there's always little small fine print in there. And these contracts that these people give out to these families, and families oftentimes don't always do a great job of looking over some of those things, and they can be missed, and they can get locked into contracts that they didn't realize were as extensive as they previously thought. I'm trying to think of other examples. Sending kids to places, like convincing these kids that, oh, this is a great fit for you at this school because of da-da-da-da-da, and which is not the truth. And they're just trying to make the most money off the kid. That was the highest bidder, and the kid gets locked into a school and doesn't fit him, and he ends up fading into the darkness. I can think of a player right now that happened to that would have been probably an NFL player if he would have had good counsel, and he ended up having poor counsel, and it obviously torpedoed his career. We oftentimes hear about stories of kids that have made it, but there's a lot more kids that don't make it because of poor decision making and poor stewardship of their career. And that's where I feel like we come in because we feel, I mean, obviously John, I am probably the least cool guy in our agency. Like, but I get to learn every day and glean wisdom from guys like who have been doing it for 40 years in the NFL and have represented all pros and Hall of Famers like Tom Mills and Drew Pittman are legends.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Dungy, last thing I'll say, Tony Dungy did a call with us, 8 months ago, right when we started, 9 months ago. And he said, the way you're setting this up, it'll take time. But when you get it set up, the message will resonate in the space. And we have seen that come to fruition times 30. It has resonated in the space.
Yeah. So I think, I think that covers it. When you keep hearing that the industry is nasty and some of these guys are slimy, and you've mentioned why you guys are not that, but it seems to me that whatever you want to call it, in the sense of the nasty part of the industry, I get, dancing with the devil, necessary evil, whatever it is. I mean, let's talk about things from the schools side, the program side at the major league level, Big Ten, SEC, I'm sure Big 12 now as well. They all have general managers. So who are you dealing with from the agency side when it comes to negotiating offers for your clients? General managers, head coaches, and then at the lower level like SDSU, I'm guessing head coaches directly.
Well, we're really fortunate because of, again, having Tom and Drew and the respect they've known. They know all these guys because when they got in, these guys were young scouts. So we atypically deal directly with the GMs and then head coaches. I mean, this last year in the spring, I was on the phone with a lot of head coaches at different schools, having conversations about kids. And then lower, the FCS level, Tom has a great relation with Dan Jackson because of Chase. But we have a great relationship with Dan Jackson and Tyler Rice at SDSU. They do a fantastic job. USD, I know that I have not had a chance to meet Coach Vitson yet, but I've heard great things about him. And then the basketball space, Coach Eric Peterson is fantastic. The job he does down there is world class. And then Brian Peterson at SDSU, same thing. I think our state, not to continue to go off chart here, John, but I think our South Dakota schools, we're very lucky in our state to have a lot of great coaches / people, OJ at Augustana and Cody Schilling at Augustana. Like, we have a lot of great people in our state that are working at these colleges. So side note there, but we are very lucky as a state. And that, like,
so how, we talked to them. How does it work with them? Whether from you, the talent evaluator that says, hey, I got this kid, because they're evaluating talent as well. And they have assistant coaches evaluating talent that they might want to, they're going to the football games. They're watching a bunch of film. But when it comes to you working with them, first of all, it sounds like they all want, to a degree, your help as an agency to land prospective players that will help their teams. So how does that first conversation about a potential athlete that you maybe have talked to, they want to play for that team, or an athlete that you haven't talked to, but you said, hey, there's a good one out here. How does it work, the communication initially with coaches? Because we'll keep it here in South Dakota. Let's go to South Dakota.
Yeah, South Dakota. Well, first thing I'll say, my bad. Go ahead. My bad, John.
Nope. I cut myself off. What's the process like in dealing with coaches on their end with the agency?
Well, I just first say I scout for our agency. So like, I think if the schools do a good enough job, they don't need my help unless there's a really under the radar player that I say, hey, you should take a look at this kid. Yeah. But like, if we represent a player for that university, atypically we'll reach out to, when that negotiation time comes, we'll reach out to obviously the family and the player first, say, hey, what would you like out of this deal? And then we go to the university, the GM or the head coach, say, hey, here's what they're looking for. Here's what we're looking for. What does this look like for you? And then kind of find a middle ground. Does that answer? That's a pretty boring quick answer, but does that answer?
No, it's fine. It's how often will they call you guys and say, hey, do you got anybody? Or what do you think of this player? Or do you know what kind of value this price tag this player may demand from us at this level, at SDSU, USD, et cetera?
Depends on the relationship. Like, obviously, I mean, it depends on the trust. Like, if a coach has, I mean, at any level, not in South Dakota, any place, if the coach has a relationship with us, they know they can trust us because we're not going to go blab. They'll call and say, hey, what do you think of this player? Or what are your thoughts on the value of this position? But then, no, obviously, that's not all schools, though. Some schools are really tight to the vest with certain, with everything, just because they're a little more cautious.
Okay. What kind of, I mean, well, nobody wants to talk about the thing that fans want to know most about, which is dollar value of NIL deals, particularly of the ones that we know best around here. And I understand that everybody's very protective of that. But you've already said the average NIL deal for an athlete, just a big ball of wax all over the country, is $600. And you've mentioned kind of the things that are attached to that. But again, more typically for a South Dakota kid, I know the dollar amount, there's differences, but what do they get themselves into if they're a high NIL athlete for that school here locally?
Well, I mean, you talk about deals outside of their revenue share. You're talking just the deals like the brands with them. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
To
and how
be
does
honest,
your agency, cut those deals? Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't want to talk too much about this because it is privacy to the player. But I would say, with the high level players in our state, whether it's at USD or SDSU or whomever, there could be money made if they do a really good job in marketing the brand. And that money can be anywhere from, like you said, a couple $100 to, hey man, if you're proving a really valuable asset for a big brand, you can make, 1,000 plus. But the theory that you're making 50 to 100,000 in just outside deals, that's reserved atypically. We heard this from a very well-known brand beverage company. The average, the average athlete making, $50 to $100,000 in branding is like 3 or 4 of them in the country. And they're all the ones you'd imagine, like the Arch Mannings and the big names with the big followings. Even the star players in our like Midwest region, whether it's Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, you name it, aren't making as much as people would think.
Okay. Do they have to be attached to name, image, and likeness? And I'm not talking about the South Dakota kids, but just like in general, is there a rule that you have to have a name, image, and likeness deal where you're endorsing a product as a college athlete? Are there in some cases it's just money beyond the revenue share that they're getting from the school?
What
kind of rules and guardrails are there to uphold what this being allowed to happen happens?
Well, this is going to sound politically correct, so don't hate me too much here. From my knowledge and what I know, when we go through that process of identifying deals, our first thing we do is we go to what are the NCAA rules in this, what are the schools' rules in this, because we don't want to have any problems with eligibility or stuff like that, and we want to follow the rules to the dot. And so I typically, like whether it's a Big Ten school, SEC school, Pac-12, or Missouri Valley Summit League school, is we want to work in coordination with their compliance to make sure that the deals that we bring to the table for the player are marching all that. And obviously there used to be a thing called NIL Go. You filled out, like once a player got a deal, you filled out the deal online if it was below a certain amount of money. I don't know. I think that system may be going away. I don't know for sure, but that was the reporting system.
Okay. Because again, I think the average fan, but before we talk to you, a lot of this is over their head. What does it mean? Do they need an NIL agency to have an endorsement deal that is truly name, image, and likeness? I'll use an example, and you can tell me what you know about this. You go into a Casey's gas station, you might see a big cardboard cutout of Chase Mason, hawking Dr. Pepper. Okay, so we all see that, we all know it. Dr. Pepper. So obviously he has a deal with Dr. Pepper. That deal or any deal where it's clear, like Maya Sellen, she's a few years back is promoting a local, I think, assisted living home. Mm-hmm. Okay, so obviously they're getting paid by these companies to do these endorsements, which they used to not legally be able to do, which is something many people were crying for them to be able to do because they carry value as college athletes and they should make some money off of their accomplishments and whatever companies feel they are worth. Now I'm babbling, but you see where I'm going here. Do they need an agency to strike those? How often is an agency involved in striking those deals? Or do companies like, say, Dr. Pepper or an assisted living home just ring up these kids, they and they can do it on their own?
So atypically, agencies can sign, like when you have a contract with a player, it could be we're your exclusive representatives of your NIL or non-exclusive, and that means the school can help. And usually the schools have done a pretty good job. Like, speaking from what I know of, I know Dan Jackson at South Dakota State and the SDSU has done a good job of like helping their players and making sure that their players have opportunity with their collector or with any schools. And I mean, every big school has collectives that they help players find brand deals to bring to them. And I think a lot of schools do a really good job of that. But I would say in regards to what we do, I think it's very valuable to have an agency that helps ascertain these deals because the legalities of it, we can go through all the contracts, read through everything, make sure fine tooth comb it. And then also we can, with our marketing team, which I think is the best in America, not trying to be exaggeratory. It's legit. They have contacts with, the big brands, Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, Chipotle, and they can make one email, one phone call, say, hey, are you interested in this player? And if they are, we can work through negotiation of, okay, what the benefit is. And I'll give you an example. We have a couple of players right now that we're spending an extraneous amount of time on to get deals with a brand and with a chain, a business chain, a big name business. And there's not a whole lot of money being exchanged right now. It's just product or business service. But it's with the goal of saying with all these players, it's like, hey, if you do a really good job of this, there's benefit long term, but it's about building relationship and showing them value. You provide value. And I really do think, John, and you can appreciate this, your dad, it's helping young people understand, like, do a service, get a service. But if you don't do your part of the service, why would they give you a service? And I think it's a life skill to be able to have and help conducive to building how to have conversations, how to carry conversation, and to market yourself.
Thank you. Let's go back to the process. We've talked about the process of kids deciding on NIL agencies, deciding on schools, how that's all linked, how it happens, the first school the kids go to. And, we want to kind of maybe hone in more on our colleges here, the Jacks, the Yotes, D2s like Augie and USF and Black Hills State. The athlete has been at the school for maybe just 1 year, their freshman year, maybe 2 years, whatever year their breakout year is. And they are all conference, maybe all American. And we all know that the big power conferences are watching for them to see which athletes can help them as transfers, knowing that they're going to make a lot more NIL money at those schools. And so how does that process work once an athlete is crushing it? Does your agency seek out athletes that are crushing it to see if they are interested in you helping them get to that Power 4 school and the best possible NIL deal? Is that part of the agency's job? Is that part of your job as a scout?
Yeah. I take a lot of pride in we beat people to the punch in regards to, we know the player's going to be good before they blow up. So I take a lot of pride. We're usually there already. I cross fingers, knock on wood. That's what we want to be. Yeah. But in the idea, in the spirit of the conversation, if we weren't there yet, and say like a player at SDSU is having a monster year, because as we've known, there's been a lot of those players have had monsters years. We want to be respectful of, okay, if they're in the middle of the season, I know and here's the thing, John, we know that there's other agencies reaching out to these kids behind the coaches' backs or whatever, and they're going to these kids and they're talking to them, promising things. We know that's happening, and we know that we don't want to get in that trough with doing that if we can avoid it. We want to go the proper way, the proper channels, and that goes to having a conversation and working in coordination with the player's parents, the player, and even potentially the coaches, saying, hey, we're really interested in representing your player for long term, but we also want to protect your player. Because say, for example, he has a breakout year at SDSU or USD or whatever, but he's even just because they had a breakout year, they may not be ready to go up to the next level, contrary to popular belief, Or B, if you have 1 year left and you're at SDSU still or USD or whatever, and you have a chance to go play in the NFL, and we're getting feedback from NFL teams saying, hey, like we view them very highly right now. Why would you want to go risk that at a bigger school? Yeah, you make some money, but if the situation isn't perfect, why would you risk that? And so we typically will say, hey, like maybe you should consider staying if it's what's best for your long term. But I try to avoid I saw it being shady, going behind people's backs to gain leverage. I try to always do things very transparently, and I think I speak for our entire agency. That's the way we want to approach things.
But by whose backs are some agencies going behind that you try not to go behind? Are you talking coaches,
GMs, universities? And it doesn't mean everything's. It's not like in one size fits all. Like sometimes if there's a player we want to represent for the NFL and he's in his junior year at an SEC school, I'm going to reach out to him and say, hey, here's what, and usually my message is very simple. Here's what we do. Here's who our client list is. Here's our vision for you. We're not here for just making money off you right now. We really believe you're an NFL player. We want to get you for the long term and work in coordination with you and your family and your coaches to make sure you're in the best position to play professionally.
Okay. But you do you, some of them are already your clients, but you say your agency does sometimes go after guys or gals who aren't clients that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you see great potential, great financial potential at the next level for. Agencies do that.
Playing potential too. Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely. 100%.
Okay. Because if that's the case, then again, we're having a conversation. The perception of the industry as a whole is that maybe translated, it's completely legal. You can do that. But it's part of the problem. It's part of the problem of the constant portal jumping in, portal jumping out of what it has become. The consternation of Jackrabbit and Coyote fans that that at least in basketball, they don't get to enjoy a great player usually for more than one season. Football, sometimes more. But you're allowed to go after them. They're allowed to go after their dreams. We've already stated many times, some players do want that more money and a bigger school from where they've started in South Dakota, and some choose to stay because of the culture. Chase Mason would be the leading example of that. But once the ball gets rolling, then how does that work? You're now okay. Well, I got a team for you. Does the agent or the agency use its connections with the big boy schools? What part does an agency play in the school that again, we're saying a South Dakota college athlete may end up transferring to for a lot of money?
Mm-hmm. So you're saying in hypothetical, if we were to have a player from South Dakota, a South Dakota athlete that wanted to leave,
yes,
what would be our role in it, correct? Okay. Well, if the player wanted to leave and it was agreed upon within the family and the structure of the system that, hey, I want to go to a different school. Obviously, there'd be a lot of conversation that would go into that. It wouldn't just be willy-nilly for us. We want to make sure everything's done the right way. Well, then we'd ascertain, okay, what schools are the best fit for said player? Like, hey, is this school fit? Like, and we got to throw money out the equation. Like right now, the money doesn't matter. It's about what school is the best fit for you spiritually, physically, mentally, culturally, and gives you the best possible shot to have success on the field or on the court there. And then after that conversation's had, and it goes, okay, what schools are available out there for that same exact cause? And what does the money match and make it worth it? And atypically, I think if you do it in that realm, it makes the window it makes the options come down to a very small portion because you get to weed out all the bad faith actors. And for us, we haven't had a South Dakota athlete leave from our state, so I can't speak because all of our kids have stayed at their schools in South Dakota. Chase didn't leave; he stayed loyal to South Dakota State.
Okay,
Joe's loyal to South Dakota State. But like, I think to the South Dakota kids you're talking about, the one thing I've seen, universally with all those kids, whether they're at Iowa State or whether they're at South Dakota State or at Nebraska with Ashland or Brindley with going to be at Nebraska is, and this is going to sound politically correct, so forgive me, they all are extremely loyal. Like they've been raised right where they're extremely loyal and big picture oriented. And that goes to a kudos to their families for doing that. And I'm not trying to be politically correct. I mean that it's been impressive, like really, really cool. So,
okay. I mean, did you work with any, or your agency work with any South Dakota State football players who eventually transferred to Washington State and helped them with their deals there?
They were already, so when we got going, that was already done. They were already at Washington State when the time we were involved.
Okay.
So
the coaches, we'll go back to working with these local coaches. Dan Jackson brings in a couple of D2 guys every year. So has USD the last few years. Do they come to you and your agency? Are you part of helping them scout and find, or at the very least, land if they've already scouted and found for themselves who from Division II NAIA they'd like to see transfer up and help their team immediately? How does that process? In what way can you guys and have you guys gotten involved?
We haven't. They don't come to us and that stuff. They don't need our help. They do a good job themselves. So yeah, they don't come to us.
But do you guys help the players get the best possible NIL deal from Division II to an SDSU or a USD?
We haven't had that situation come up yet. So if that situation were to come up, there'd be conversations with, said coach, whether it's Coach Vitzum or Coach Jackson or whomever.
Okay. Is that something you're looking to do or would like to do?
If the player's good enough, absolutely. But then if the player has to be good enough, I think, it's in regards to the local university, South Dakota State, University of South Dakota, or Augustana. I think Augustana does a really good job because there's players every year out of there that are getting smells around the NFL. And I know a lot of scouts have talked about Augustana, or whomever. They do a good job of developing the kids at their schools. I know it sounds really corny, but they do. So there's kids that always have a chance. One or two of them always have a chance every year, whether they're UDFAs or late round picks. And so our NFL guys, when our agency, Tom, Matt, and Drew do a good job of having conversations with, like a Coach Jackson about, hey, is there a player? There's a player we're interested in here. Would we love to have a meeting with them if that conversation were to have happen?
Yeah. I'm thinking of like the Griffin Wildes and Evan Bernsteins of the world, or most recently LJ Phillips, South Dakota to Iowa, the lineman Joe Cotton from USD to Cincinnati. I'm not asking you to address those situations. Those weren't your clients, but maybe you know how all of this works. Again, we're trying to give fans an idea of how this works. In general, they have schools contact them because they're making a lot of noise, and it's not hard for them to find when they're, again, near the top of the statistical charts or being named to the All-Conference and All-America teams. So the schools contact them, I'm guessing, and then once they become interested in the school, I mean, to your knowledge, do kids typically say, "I just want to play for you, and we'll figure out the NIL later"? Again, I'm talking about like FCS guys to Power 4, or is it more so? No, we're trying to go to the highest bidders too, even though there's not quite as much money for those guys as there is for the 4 and 5 stars out of high school.
Yeah. I can't speak for any of those guys as you said, but what I can say to that note,
the process
is once the player enters the portal, atypically they have an agent, so the school will reach out to the player. The school will still reach. It's funny, when a player has an agent, the school will oftentimes still reach out to the player first. And the player will atypically say, "Hey, please have this conversation with my agent." And that's when the agent steps in. And I've heard stories of clients that, of kids, I should say, coming from this level that have said, we really like the fit here. We'll worry with the money later. To your point, I've heard that before. And then some kids say, "Hey, I want the biggest bag. I want the most amount of money." And I don't blame them either way. Like some kids, it's a chance to set up their nest egg for life.
Yeah. So some cleanup items to head down the track here toward landing the plane. Is there anything legally an NIL agency cannot do? Like an absolute no in this whole process of landing clients, of representing clients in any part of the processes where they get these NIL deals?
Man, to be honest, John, I am absolutely sure there is. I can't think of anything off the top of my head because, and I say this again as we play, we're so stringently walking the legal line. We don't even get close to breaking any rules in terms of we're very ethically and morally strong. So I can't even answer that because I'm not even sure of any rules that would be illegal because we don't even get close to that realm.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. To you, just as a scout, back to your role in finding players, and not just in your days with this agency, but maybe in the days before where you said you were, you were just scouting and evaluating players as a side hustle, not even getting paid for it, helping kids get to colleges. To you, at what line is appropriate contact in talking to players, initializing relationships with them? Where's the line of, hey, you've gone too far in trying to get a high schooler or a college kid as a client in the way you contact them and where it goes?
I just had this conversation yesterday with a scout from a SEC school about how crazy the industry had gotten, where there's kids that are 13 and 14 years old being asked to make financial decisions and commitments and all these things, and it feels odd and wrong almost. But it's the way the industry's going. To me, it's like at the end of the day, if a kid's going to be reached out to, but when you're 14 years old, or you're a freshman in high school, it's 90% of the time, 90% of the comes to you because you're a freak of nature, like athlete. And so, when we do it, I always feel odd right away when I reach out to the player to get a hold of the parent. So I have to get a hold of the parent through the player. And I always make sure I'm very clear when I message them saying, hey, I need to talk to your parent first. Like, I like your game, but I need to have a conversation with your parent. I'm not saying it's everyone else does it, but to us and to me, it's about being respectful of the structure. But to answer your question directly, where's the line drawn? I think when you're an 8th grader or a freshman, anything below that, to me, it seems a little bit like in the weeds. It's because like you don't know yet. And it's just kind of like, let them be kids.
Okay. And so if you're contacting a parent, are you going to games or summer club games or high school games and approaching the parent, or do you find them on Facebook? Like, how do you get in touch with the parent if you don't know if you don't know them?
I get the number from the player, and I say, hey, give my number to your parent and have them call me. And that's the first contact I need to have.
How do you find the player to get to the parent?
I'll message him on social media saying, hey, my name is such and such, and here's what I need from you. I said your game's fantastic, but I really want to have a conversation with your mom and dad.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's only been 1 or 2 players I've had to do that with that are like freshmen or sophomores in high school. I'm like, okay, I need to talk to your parent. And atypically the parents will call me back right away and we'll have a conversation. And they always say the same things. We appreciate you because you're not the first person that's done this, and you're the only person that's ever wanted to reach out to us.
Yeah. In that process, has there ever been a time where you felt or were told, hey, you've gone too far, or you stepped over a line?
No, never. Never, because when you operate in transparency and authenticity and you have legitimacy tied to you, I think people know, like, they know your heart and their value of what your heart and your motives are. I never had that happen to me.
What have you learned the most out of this process of being being a cog in the wheel of the wild, wild west of NIL, college player free agency, and free to travel anywhere they want every year?
Boy,
what have you learned, and even in your case, how have you grown so far in this?
John, I could give you a big hug right now for asking that question. It's probably the most important question you ask all day. John, I'm a South Dakota kid, dude. Like, I'm not perfect. I grew up here, and I've had to grow a lot this last year. I've been challenged a lot by my bosses to grow as a man, how you communicate, how you handle disappointment, how to be told no, how you handle being told yes. I've grown a lot and I've learned a lot, and I've been really gracious and I'm grateful for the grace that's been given to me by college coaches, whether it's Coach Jackson at SDSU or Coach Peterson at USD, whomever, that have been willing to give advice and counsel that, hey, here's the way that you should do this or should do this. And because they value those coaches and other ones that value the way we're doing our business in regards to value system. What I've learned, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And at the end of the day, like, I guess 3 main points I'll say. One, you could be hyper legitimate while also being hyper ethically and morally strong. And I take John, so much freaking pride in that, because I would say we're one of the only entities in America that has the level of context at our level, which is comparative to anyone in the country, but also is super or morally and ethically bound. We love Jesus and we love people very, very transparently. 2, what I've learned is the authenticity. Leadership means nothing until you're authentic. So being hyper authentic and hyper consistent all the time, every time. For you, John, if I'm going after John Gaskin's 5-star athletes, right? Your kids that are studs. I want to be hyper authentic with you as a father and say, hey, here's what I think of your sons, but I don't want to push you out. I'm signing you, because I always tell kids, I told this to Ashton Copel's mom and dad, we're not just signing your daughter, we're signing your family. And we want to come alongside your family and love your family. And I will say this, John, with every player we've signed, I think if you were to ask any of them, I think they would all say the same things. What Cash or what Noah or what any of our agencies said, we've never wavered. We've been the same person that we were when we signed them. We've been the same person throughout the process, and we've been the same person in the entirety. We take pride in that. And lastly, John, I'll say this: like, it's a job, and I'm every night, and I'm not exaggerating here. I need you to know how authentic I am when I say this. When I go to bed every night, I tend to take about 10, 15 minutes to pray, and it's like, hey, thank God for things, and just pray for wisdom and discernment for the agency. And I'm telling you, I'm doing this a year now, and I still feel the same amount of gratitude and gratefulness that I did when I started this. I love my freaking job, John. I get to get paid a salary to love on players, love on families, and help be stewards in my role as they go throughout their careers. And then I get to know that when I go out and advocate for our agency, I know that I'm advocating for something that I believe in fully, that I would have my own kids go to. And then I get to see the success of, like, obviously I haven't met Baker yet, but we have these NFL guys, but I get to see the success of our clients and the happiness. Like, not the name drop here, but like one of our clients is Sullivan Schlumgen at Iowa State, or I mean, I could talk to anybody. There's a ton of them, but and him and his dad and his mom and I his dad and his parents and I get along great. Like, I have a relationship with all of our families, not just our players. Every one of our clients that you see on our website, I know their families. And so it makes it awesome because it feels like family. And I think, the last thing I'll say, I'm on 4 now. I ramble if you couldn't tell, is,
I know how that goes.
I want to be a consistent learner. Like, I don't know everything, John. I promise I don't. Contrary to what you may think. Just kidding. But I don't know everything. I want to be a lifelong learner. But the one thing I do know is that at the end of the day, like, no one's going to love players more than we're going to love them. This is just a fact of life. And no one's going to be more honest and authentic than we are. And we're going to always be truthful. Like, we're not going to always say everything's great. Like, if a player's going through a tough time, we're like, hey, because Tom Mills always says this. Last thing I'll say, I promise. Tom Mills, he's a legend. He always says, rarely is athletics or life a straight line. It's easy to play from the lead when things are going great with the athlete, when they're 5 stars or they're getting drafted first overall, whatever it may be. But who are you when things aren't going great, when you have a career injury or something like that? Who are you? Are you showing up then even when things aren't going great? And I have a litany of things I could tell you this year when things weren't going great with players. And we just said, we believe in you still. Nothing's changed. We love you. We care about you. We're going to walk through this with you. And that to me is much more important, because football and basketball are going to end one day. One day players are going to get married, have families, and we want to be with them throughout all of that. It sounds corny. I get it, John. It sounds stupid, but we really believe in that. And I just think we do it at a really high level, and I'm proud that we're from South Dakota.
Thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on everything you and your agency have accomplished up until now. And most of all, thank you for illuminating. We hope some people got something out of this to learn how it all works, at least from your agency's point of view.
Well, thank you. I know I talk a lot, and I apologize for rambling too much.
Nope, you did fine.
I love listening to your show and listening to the coaches that come out here. So it was good. And I know we have a lot of mutual friends in the space, and so they all speak really highly of you. And so I was like, this would be an awesome opportunity to be able to advocate to our state about what we're homegrown. We want the best in South Dakota to come to CSG.
Glad we did it. Hope people got something out of it. Noah Clair, NIL, Scout, and NFL, and all the above. For video producer Cordell Wright, I'm John Gaskins. Happy hour, and cheers.
You need anything else, John?
No, I think I'm good, Greg. I think I'm going to tap out.
All right. Have a good night.